What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So the topic of game preservation has been coming up quite a bit recently, especially after Sony announced that some of their old PlayStation stores would be getting shut down. Well, now it looks like on the PlayStation 3 side of things, it could actually be getting a bit worse as people started to realize that patches for some of their PlayStation 3 games were not downloading anymore, and we'll go over that one here today. Also, we're going to talk about Sony and mobile gaming as a new job listing could be pointing to some of the bigger PlayStation franchises actually heading to your cell phone. Oh, and we're also going to take a trip back to 2002 at the end of the show today after a catalog for Nintendo was posted up online. Guys, if you enjoyed these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Small channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with the PlayStation 4 and its own game preservation issue as people started to talk about the idea of not being able to play your physical games on the PS4 if there's no server left to call to. And that sounds weird, doesn't it? It's like, I have the disc, I have the system. Why wouldn't I be able to play it? Well, it turns out if the battery inside of your PS4 dies, it will throw up an error code because it can't set the time and check in with the PlayStation servers if they don't exist anymore. And it looks like someone actually decided to go ahead and try it out. We can see this here. This over on Twitter from Forrest saying, just as mentioned in his video with the CMOS battery, I took out the battery to see if I could replicate the issue, and well, it does not play any physical or digital games without connecting online. We can see the error code there. And I'm not surprised for digital games. I think most of us realize, all right, this digital game someday probably won't work because I don't have it in front of me physically on a disc. I know a lot of discs now are like installs basically. We don't really use, the system just uses the disc to make sure you own the game. It installs like the 50 gigabytes or whatever to the hard drive itself. But still, if you have the disc in front of you, you assume you have the game. But if it has no server to call to, because apparently the date and all this is tied to trophies and it can't reset its date through the internet, then you have a problem and your physical disc won't work. I'm hoping that Sony looks at this before they ever shut down access to the PS4 store and say, okay, let's go ahead and patch this out and fix it. But otherwise, yeah, we could be 20, 30 years from now and just PS4s don't work. Also, I've noticed talk around Metal Gear Solid has been coming up quite a bit over the last couple of months. Nate and I will kind of joke around about the idea of there being a Metal Gear Solid remake out there, you know, somewhere in development, but it also came up pretty recently on Defining Duke from ACG, as he mentioned that Konami was kind of shopping around the idea of the Metal Gear rights kind of going around to maybe different companies who would be interested. And then he also clarified a bit later on Reddit where he said, I was simply stating I had heard from a source the same that informed of the X-Boost, the Deathloop delay, Bloodlines, and other stuff I had talked about as saying this happening and that Metal Gear itself was in some way up for grabs, which then popped up in this discussion about Kojima. And I like the idea of Konami just saying, you know what, we probably shouldn't try to make another Metal Gear Solid game after Survive. Like, we don't need Survive 2. I think we're good on that one. Konami should just be kind of over here doing their pachinko thing and maybe occasionally releasing like a Contra game or something. Otherwise, though, their franchises, they should just take and license out. Absolutely. We've heard the rumors of Silent Hill. Metal Gear Solid, I think, is an awesome one to do a remake for, and hey, maybe that will happen at some point. Can you imagine Bluepoint getting rights to making a Metal Gear Solid remake on the PlayStation 5? That would look incredible. I know we had Twin Snakes, but that was a while ago. Let's see what Bluepoint can do with Metal Gear Solid and some of the newer technology we have in these consoles. Oh, and here was a surprising bit of news that popped up. We can see this rating. This is for Microsoft Flight Simulator on the Xbox One that was rated through PEGI. We can see it's rated 3 right there, and it released March 31st. That's not the game, that's just the rating itself where it was posted up, I guess, on their site. And a lot of people are looking at this and wondering, wait a minute, did they really get Flight Simulator working on the Xbox One, like the VCR Xbox One? No, I don't think they did, and I wouldn't expect it to work anyway, mostly because it beats up current PCs anyway. So you go back to that Xbox One and whew, that would be something to see. I mean, we're talking like slideshow probably there, if it can even boot up and run it. But the idea of it going to the Xbox One, most likely through this rating, is just them covering their bases from when they tried to make it run, which I'm sure they attempted it, and they realized they couldn't. This is just probably a rating that was left over just in case they were able to. I would just expect it heading to the Series X and the Series S this summer as already announced. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with the PlayStation 3 and some issues we're seeing around patches for games you may already own. Now, we already know the stores for the PS3, the Vita, Vita and the PSP will be shut down, with the last one being shut down this summer. But the idea of being able to still patch your games, I think, is something a lot of us expected, because you'll still be able to download the games that you've already purchased. You just won't be able to make any new purchases from that PlayStation Store that you won't be able to access anymore with, say, your PlayStation 3. Well, the other day, people started to notice that they weren't able to retrieve patches for certain games, and we can see this here. This is a full thread, which you can go through too and check out, because they have been updating the list here and there as they found games that were not working with patches. And this is over on PSN profiles, where you see at the top, some of PS3 video games don't get a patch, and the patch is essential to play online and earn trophies, which is the biggest thing here, because there are a lot of people who, of course, want to get all the trophies in a game. Well, the most frustrating thing about some trophies is when online is needed, but there are no servers because they've been taken down. So you essentially cannot get the trophy you need to 100% the thing, or leaderboard trophies. Those are all things that exist that are really annoying. But the idea here is some of these patches, of course, would also make the game work correctly. There are some games that come out and we all expect it to work when it does, and it doesn't, and then we have to wait a week or two for a patch to fix it. We don't really think about the overall long-term scenario here, where, okay, what if we get down to the 20 years from now and you're not able to download the patch that was really important for this game to work? I'm thinking of things like Skyrim on the PS3, that was not a good release. And I remember there were a lot of patches that attempted to fix that issue, and it was a whole thing there. But I mean, you can see the listing here that's changed over time, and I'm gonna kind of talk about why that is. I mean, you can see 007 Legends, Battlefield 4, Castlevania Lords of Shadow, Dante's Inferno, that's a pretty big one there. But what's interesting is some of these games have patches that work in regions and not working in others. So for example, you might have something like Castlevania Lords of Shadow be able to download its patch in North America, for example, but then in Europe, it can't download its patch. And some games have been removed from this list because all of a sudden the patches came back. Others are added because they went away. It seems very spotty right now, and I'm not 100% sure why that would be, unless maybe some of these servers are being moved or changed or altered in some way as they're working towards these stores being shut down, or it's up to third parties to host some of these patches. There are a lot of PS3 games, obviously, that you would have to go through to test to see which patches work and which don't, which people are doing that in this thread here. They're literally going through, popping the disc in and seeing if the latest patch will be able to download. And it's going to be interesting when these stores shut down, because as I said before, PS3 games will jump in price. They already are. Ratchet & Clank, there are a couple Ratchet & Clank games right now on eBay for over $50. It is to that point already, and the stores aren't even shut down. So we're talking about patches now. We're talking about these games getting expensive, and it's going to be an interesting summer after Sony starts pulling these stores down. I really would like to think that they have a plan for some of their legacy software, whether it's having PS Now at least stream a lot of these titles, and they just all of a sudden have a big explosion of retro games onto that PlayStation Now service that you can even download onto your PS5. But with Jim Ryan there, I'm not really holding my breath on it. Next up, let's talk about Sony and mobile games, as there was a job listing that was spotted, this by Eurogamer, and we can see that here, where they say a job advertisement for head of mobile. PlayStation Studios SIE reveals plans for the successful candidate to focus on successfully adapting PlayStation's most popular franchises for mobile. It will be responsible for building and scaling a team of mobile leaders and will serve as the head of this new business unit within PlayStation Studios. And this is going to be pretty interesting. It's not surprising necessarily, because Sony has actually seen some success in the the mobile sector. This is mostly under their Sony Music section, I believe, that section of the company. They had Fate Grand Order that I know at one point actually beat out a lot of Tencent's games. I think through 2019, it generated the most revenue out of all mobile games, and it was billions of dollars. That's right, billions, a couple hundred million, no. This game was making a ton of money for Sony. And with what we're seeing now, Sony's kind of branching out with some of their bigger franchises. Horizon, on PC, Days Gone is going to PC, and I am not surprised to hear that, they're looking at cell phones because cell phone games make a ton of money. Sounds like something that a big corporation like Sony would look into doing. Now, it's going to be interesting to see, because I do think they will do this, and it's gonna be fun when this kind of stuff gets announced. But Ratchet & Clank, a gacha game, that's something that probably will happen. They already have like a runner game, I think, for Sackboy. I know they have like an Uncharted game. It's very small. I think it's like a puzzle-based game, but they do have some games from PlayStation with some of those IPs that have been adapted over. They're just not like a big game like that they've advertised heavily or put we'll say a lot of resources into, because you see Nintendo's made a massive jump into mobile. They just announced a new Pikmin game in collaboration with Niantic, and Pokemon Go has been off and running. They moved over Animal Crossing, Dr. Mario, Mario Kart, Mario Run. Yeah, Sony's looking at that and saying, wow, they're making some pretty good money with some of these titles. Obviously, Pokemon Go is shared between Nintendo and a couple of companies, but you still see those kind of numbers. So Sony might look at that and say, well, we do have some pretty big IPs like a God of War, Horizon, Gran Turismo, which would probably work well because racing games like Asphalt do make quite a bit of money on cell phones. I'm not surprised to hear this at all, and really, I'm sure it's going to take them a couple of years to get this spun up and moving, but they could start announcing some of these games, I think, for mobile within the next, I'm going to say year to year and a half, and then get the ball rolling on that. Next up, let's talk about a serious bug that is really messing up Outriders right now, and it does look like People Can Fly and Square have been working really hard to try to get this corrected, but in a looter shooter style game where the whole point is to collect guns and armor and all of this, because you'll hit the level cap right eventually. It's pretty quick actually in Outriders. After you beat the game, then you go into the end game and all of this. The idea then becomes, okay, let me get some of the legendary guns and weapons and armor and all of this and fill out a full set and become really strong that way. Well, the problem is, apparently people are having everything wiped in Outriders. I mean, you can see this Reddit post here as an example where they say, adios Outriders, inventory wipe and not being able to load into my 80-hour main is my final straw. Yeah, and a lot of those hours, I'm telling you, is doing all these different runs, defeating bosses, and then hoping that you'll have the dice roll in your favor with randomly generated loot through a looter shooter like Outriders. Having your inventory getting wiped is one of the worst things for a game like this, but they have been releasing patch after patch after patch, and some of it has fixed it, but it appears that it is still ongoing. Some people are actually afraid to log in to Outriders. If you go on the Reddit now, there are literally posts like, is it safe to play Outriders? Think about that for a second. A game like this where obviously it's a new IP, people were kind of down on it like a year ago when they were first seeing it, and it comes out. It's actually more popular than I thought it would be. I think a lot of people were surprised by this one, and they get hit with a bug that just starts wiping out inventory. So the big, apparently, solution right now, this is according to People Can Fly and Square, is if your inventory gets wiped, turn off the game immediately. And all I'm thinking is, if I'm someone who's 200 hours deep, and I have a bunch of legendary stuff, I complete a run, and I look at my inventory, everything's gone, my character has nothing on at that point, I'm just pulling the cord and I'm crossing my fingers that my Xbox, my PlayStation survives that hard shutdown. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about an old catalog. It's one that I actually came across yesterday on Reddit, and it's really, really cool because yes, it is like a massive wave of nostalgia. Or if you're someone who's a bit younger and you're wondering, okay, what was it like to look through a magazine when the GameCube was like just came out and like the Game Boy Advance was super hot and all of this? What was it like to kind of shop around for that? Well, someone actually posted up a catalog from winter of 2002 for Nintendo, and it is super high resolution. It's very easy to go through and read, and you can even download the whole thing and just kind of page through it. But we can see this here on Reddit where they say found and uploaded an old Nintendo catalog from winter of 2002. And there's actually a few pages here I'll quickly show you. For example, just take a look at the table of contents. Nintendo GameCube at the top, and they just kind of go through the different sections. Of course, classic, fighting, first-person shooter, sports, RPG. And then we have Game Boy Advance, even an entire section here for the e-reader, something that most people have forgotten about now. And they also go through the different hardware with Game Boy Advanced, the GameCube, and some accessories. And if you start going through it, you'll notice they have entire pages like dedicated to Wind Waker, for example, right here. And these pages are very large, by the way. They are very, very high resolution. So most of these pages are like 7, 8, 9 megabytes in size. And you can zoom in pretty far here to look at some of the screenshots. And I went through, I saw Wind Waker, I saw Metroid Prime. There's also a big like collage of all these different screenshots from games that you could buy on the GameCube that year. It's just really fun to go through it. They have a full link set up where this is on archive.org, so you can just download all of it at once. I think it was like 500 megabytes. It takes a little while to download from archive, or they also have like a torrent that they've set up to download this entire catalog as well. It was just something cool, a ton of nostalgia here, and I thought I'd let you guys know about it. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're taking a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, have you played a PS3, PSP, or PS Vita game in the last year? 57% of you said no, 43% of you said yes. And I do wonder if this poll, the results will be different if, say, your PlayStation 5 or even your PS4 could play PS3 games or even PS2 games, even PS1 games natively, like take the disc and you pop it in. Would you all of a sudden say, oh yeah, I have, because I would have popped this game into my PS5, even like the other day? It is something to think about there, because Sony and Jim Ryan now really views this as no one really uses backwards compatibility, but they do ask about it, and they must have the numbers that back all of this up, right? So I do like what Microsoft's doing with their backwards compatibility, but I do wonder if people would actually use it a lot if it was there. Let me know actually down below if your answer to this would have changed if your PS5, say, could play your PS2 or PS3 games. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from David saying, this timestamp mishap would be a good April 1st joke. That's a good idea. Actually, I will put that one in the bank and I'll save that for next year. April 1st, mess around with the timestamps. I could probably have some fun there. But as for the whole thing with the timestamps that went on yesterday, that actually, I had changed the template, I would put them in, and I guess I just didn't save it, or it didn't save or something. And then the next day when I come back to look at the comments for the comment of the day, I noticed that people were leaving their own timestamps. Whoops, I went in and then fixed it. But yeah, just a mistake there. I guess the Google didn't save it, or YouTube, or I just didn't have it all in. Who knows? Anyway, though, I'll make sure to double check it next time, like for this video. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button, it really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Where's the PlayStation 3 games having issues around getting patches right now? It's kind of all over the place, and I'm curious what will happen when the PS3 store does officially go down. Also, what about that Nintendo catalog? Did you get a chance to look through it? And if you had to pick one Sony franchise that you think would make them the most money moving over to cell phones, which one would it be? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.